to What the Frac.
We are your fractional team, and today we break down marketing trends, strategies, and tactics in
30 minutes or less
so that you can do the fun stuff like be creative.
Tamara, we're back.
We are back. And Nicole, we have our first business lawyer with us today.
That's amazing.
For What the Frac, Jordan, thank you for joining us, bringing your legal expertise to the show.
I hope.
Well, so let me introduce you to everyone. So today our guest is Jordan Denning. He is a legal strategist with 360 Business Law and a trusted advisor to growing and emerging companies. He helps startups scale up and navigate contracts, compliance, and risk without getting burdened in legal red tape. With an eye on how AI is transforming the legal industry, Jordan brings practical insights that every founder and business leader needs to hear, especially your work startups right now, and you're not filing patents, but you're working around patents, which I find really interesting, and I'm getting so many questions on. So I think we should just dive in to our questions, and maybe my questions. I'm going to use this as my personal startup legal session here. Jordan, so now what are the problems that you're seeing startups and young businesses face most right
now? To be honest with you, fundraising out of the gate and raising capital is difficult, not only because of the economic times, but people don't have a lot of experience in it. It can be uncomfortable. It can be difficult negotiating, determining how much you need, where you're going to get it, depending on different phases of the company's life, basically, is one major obstacle that I see a lot of. And the other is just a lot of entrepreneurs, startup people have great ideas, great passion, but no idea really where to begin or how to begin the right way so that they don't have issues down the road. Are probably the two biggest things. And then the third, now that you brought up patents earlier, is understanding the value of protecting your IP and your brand and just how valuable your intellectual property is. And that means your trademarks, your copyrights, your logo, your name, your domain name. If you're talking patents, your process, behind the scenes, the secret sauce, if you will, all critical. That is your most valuable asset, which goes hand in hand with when you're trying to raise money. Investors often want to evaluate and see what you really have there. Or is it just kind of a great idea and a lot of smoke and mirrors?
I mean, well, one,
you started out. Answer.
No, it's good. But like Nicole, I mean, I feel like fundraising, we could go down a rabbit hole talking about that right now because there's just so much to unpack. So I want to dive into protecting yourself, right? Protecting your IP, protecting your small business. How, like, where does a small business owner or startup even like begin with that? Like, what should they be thinking in order to understand what they need to do and the steps they need to take?
Well, I think the first thing is, I mean, there are a number of obviously thoughts flying around when you're first starting out and you have a great idea and you don't know where to begin. You want to figure out what kind of entity do you want to be? Do you want to be an LLC? Do you want to be a corporation? Are you going to go it alone? Are you going to have partners? Or is it going to be friends and family involved? There's all kinds of things, which then goes right into, well, we need capital to do almost any of this. So where do we go for that? And then you can get into the more fun stuff, if you will, which is, building a website, playing around with names, looking at the market, pricing, all that kind of stuff.
And so where do you think is, sorry, Nicole, if I'm jumping in, because I'm not, again, this is going to be my personal session, just if anyone.
Yeah, right.
No, you're
I'll send you the bill.
Yeah. Where do a business owner needs to go, I need a lawyer now? Like what steps are those that are kind of critical that, because I feel like right now people can start a business and go a very long time without thinking they need a lawyer because there's so much that they can do online. Where do you think it's actually necessary to stop and go, you know what, I should chat with someone about this and get my ducks aligned?
Well, there's a lot of factors that go into that decision. And again, budget being one of them. The network is important. If you have friends or relationships that can advise you as early as possible on a budget, then I strongly recommend that. I understand there's all kinds of legal platforms out there, but I've had more than one experience where my clients have started out saying, yeah, we'll just do it on LegalZoom for, a couple $100, and then it turns into a nightmare, and then they end up coming back, and we have to kind of unravel certain things or make documents were done correctly, all of that sort of stuff. So the short answer is I would advise, and I guess I'm a little bit biased, but not really, but it would be as soon as you can. If you're serious about it, you want to talk to an attorney.
Yeah, I think that, it's funny you say that. I was a startup founder, small business owner. My mentors were very much from that space of like, you do work on a handshake and, why spend a ton of money drawing up a contract when you're literally splitting paper, right? At this point, like draw up a contract once you have actual things to split, right? And I've seen that go bad a lot of ways, especially in things like hiring or contractors or all of these pieces. What advice do you give to startup founders and small business owners who are trying to find the right lawyer to bring in to advise them? How do they pick? Are all lawyers created equal?
I don't think they are. But again, a lot of it, my practice is very relationship driven. And what I mean by that is I like to become friends or have a prior relationship with my clients and kind of really dive into what the passion is, what the goal is, what the mission is, what the company is all about. And if you can find somebody like that, then that's the best way to choose one. I would not recommend just kind of going online and typing in Googling lawyer and then, making a call and going forward. You can always find out about different attorneys through mutual friends. I'm here today because of a mutual friend. So there are certainly ways to at least have a few people removed at a minimum, rather than just kind of pick somebody, throw darts at a board, if you will. Because if you're going to make it as a founder and you're really passionate about it, you kind of have to be all in to a certain degree. And if you're going to be all in, you don't want to mess around with the professionals that you are engaging with.
So I have to give a shout out to Mark.
Oops, sorry.
Oh, right. Well, let me give it, because he mentioned that we are connected through a mutual friend. So while we're talking about that, I have to give a shout out to Mark Moyer, who did introduce us, saying that we were both doing the fractional thing, right? And that we needed to connect, and we did, and it happened to be right around when both of us were filing patent pending submissions. And so we connected right away, and this is what made me think, so many people are trying to protect their IP. But Nicole, before I go into my question, I'll let you ask yours since I cut you off.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. I was just thinking, like, in your title or in your bio, we talk about you being a business lawyer. And I think that that's the question here, right? Like, what is the different types of lawyers that we're going to be working with as startup founders? And I think, for me, I have my lawyer and my CPA that I meet with multiple times a year just to like tell them what I'm doing so that they can advise and know, because if they don't know, they can't ask the right questions, and I don't know the questions to ask. But like, should I be looking for a business lawyer? Should I be looking for a contract lawyer? Like, what type of lawyer should I be kind of looking for, that general counsel?
It very much depends on your situation. I mean, and a lot of that comes from experience from both the lawyer side and the founder's side. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a while, so I've seen a lot of different types of matters, if you will, and by that I can now handle a lot of different things, so I can wear multiple hats when it comes to a startup founder who can't or doesn't want to pay for 3-4 lawyers in different fields. So I'll do a little bit of employment law, I'll do the intellectual property, I'll do the corporate filings, compliance, deals, M&A, all that stuff, simply because I've been thrown into those situations over the years. Now, on the other hand of the coin, there are pure startup lawyers with just pure expertise, and that's all they do all day long, and they're great at it, and you won't miss a beat with them. But can they handle an employment dispute? Not necessarily. So you kind of really have to drill down on what the goal is, what the issue is, what the problem is, where you want to put your money, and again, what the real emphasis is. Is it HR and hiring, or is it let's make sure we do this capital raise perfectly right?
So if we're talking about contracts, is it acceptable to drop your contracts on ChatGPT?
I am not a fan. That might get me in trouble. But I've also been doing it a little bit longer. But I've also heard horror stories about what comes out of ChatGPT, and the lawyer using it doesn't really double check the work before it goes out the door. And it turns out that something was miscited or terribly wrong, in important points. So there is a certain reliance on ChatGPT that scares me, and the same with AI. Really, I don't use it a ton. I use it for contracts, and I use it for a review process. I mean, a first or early stage drafting process, but then I always look at it.
Okay, so you're telling me that I need to have someone look at the content that I've created. Is what I'm taking from this.
Tamara, the way that I use the AI in the contract deal is like, you could put in, you've already trained AI to know what your company's all about and all that, but you could put in like, does this contract protect me, or what should I know in this contract, or be, so you can be using it to kind of review things. And I think that that's such a great way to kind of use it. But one of the things that I will say is this comes back to like, if you are going to be in business, I think it's super smart to at least have someone, even if you aren't you trust, in your back pocket, because things like IP, right? We keep talking about IP, and that's such a big point for raising capital and all of this. I did not know this, but once you mention your company in public, it starts a clock on how quickly you have to get your IP patents, right? And that's something that, like, lawyers, having someone in your back pocket to just be like, call up and be like, hey, can we discuss this? I'm thinking about doing this pitch competition, and I'm going to pitch this thing, but does that start a clock, right? Or what can I say in there that actually helps me or hurts me, right? Those are things that, like, you need to have someone who understands the law very intimately from a very early stage. And that's where I think, if you're doing fractional, Jordan, can you talk about how, like, lawyers work in a fractional way with companies?
Well, yeah, I take on projects. I wouldn't call it fractional because I am with 360 Business Law, but it is kind of project based. And then I'll take on other projects with, through other relationships that I have. But fractional generally is, again, good for startups because it's a budgetary issue and also a time issue. You're not going to need a full-time general counsel, for example, right out of the gate. But that the fractional person can be that person that works with you, X hours a week and is available to you, maybe on an hourly basis, even when you need to pick up the phone and you have those questions that are multitude of them early on. But again, the beauty of it is you don't need to bring on a full-time GC, nor do you need to pay exorbitant fees to an outside firm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of, I mean, obviously it makes a lot of sense. I'm still curious now because I'm going to take us back for a second, Nicole, because you mentioned the clock starting with IP. What do startups need to be thinking about with their IP immediately then? Like, we just talked about a clock and then we left everybody hanging. How do we?
Yeah. Essentially doing as much as you can to protect what you have out of the gate. And I know that's a very general statement, but if you're, for example, if you have a software, a technology, but you can't yet pay for a full-fledged patent, you go out and you get a provisional patent so that it looks like, and it is realistic that, hey, we're going to get a patent soon when the timing is right, or we have the capital to do so, et cetera. In the meantime, we have a provisional, so we're real, we're in the game, we're filed at the USPTO. Investor, you can check us out. Other people we're talking to, you can check us out. If it's a great logo that you came up with, a great mark, you want to search that and protect that and get that trademarked right away. The same with the copyright. Because as Nicole alluded to, once you get out there and you're trying to build your business by showing it to people, whether it be, pitch events, sales meetings, which you have to do to get some revenues going, you need to have at least the minimum, a modicum of protection before you start blathering it out to the world and somebody picks it up and runs with it, right? So what I've seen a lot of companies do is you just kind of show enough to get them interested to want to see more at a second meeting or a deeper dive or a deeper presentation, which leads to things like non-disclosure agreements, right? Which you have people sign when you're ready to take that step into the meeting, where you show them a little bit more. Both sides seem to be serious, whether it's an investor or a potential buyer or client, rather, customer. But you don't want them to take your idea after your great meeting and run off to all their friends, and you see your idea popping up the next week because they have the resources.
Yeah, you mentioned Tamara. I was ready to ask this question. He mentions non-disclosure agreements, right? And I have signed a million of these non-disclosure agreements. It's part of doing business. It's part of doing business in the tech and innovation space. But recently, I've had a few people talk about how they really don't protect you anymore. So, Jordan, how protected am I with a non-disclosure? Like, should people be signing these all the time and requiring them?
It's good practice to certainly require them, and people will require them of you and sign them. But in reality, they are far less effective than they used to be, in part because, unless you have other things, underlying support to, for some reason, dissuade these people from violating an agreement like that, it's very hard to enforce. They're just going to go and do it. And that's just the reality.
Yeah, I've heard so many horror stories of people pitching to larger companies, like, going in and starting an acquisition process. And then all of a sudden, the company's not interested anymore. And that company's then developing it, a month later. It's ridiculous how often you kind of hear these stories right now. Kind of the same goes for, I'm curious, not non-disclosures, non-competes, right? Are people still are employers still doing the non-competes, or has that gone away? I mean, as fractionals, I think that's something that is a very interesting conversation because you're working for multiple companies, sometimes in the same sector, right? So what is the status with non-competes? I know that they were not legal, and then maybe they were. What's going on?
What is happening with non-competes is while they are not, I'll say, honored or valid in most jurisdictions anymore, a lot of companies and people are still kind of throwing in non-compete language in contracts that are larger than just a non-compete. They might try to veil it, disguise it as like a non-solicitation type clause, things like this. But at the end of the day, much less enforceable than they have been.
Interesting. So on both sides of the coin,
So
there,
if you're
an employer, it's kind of, it's a shame. If you're a contractor, it's much better for you.
Right.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, all I was going to ask is, I guess a lot of the people that are listening today are, SMBs, they are startup founders, they have small budgets, they don't have, the money for full-time legal counsel or whatever that may look like. So if I came to you and I said, hey, I have a small budget, I can only do one or two things, what is the number one thing that businesses should be looking at to start? Is that like a templated contract? Is that a hiring piece? Like what is like the number one foundational piece you would recommend any business start with?
If you are brand new and you haven't taken any steps whatsoever, I would say protect what is going to be the lifeblood of the company. If that's an invention, if that is a product, get that protected, and then form your entity. And then you have a formal structure under which to operate, to enter into contracts, to, buy supplies as needed, and it's not on you personally anymore. Now it's your company. But I think I'm so adamant about protecting what is the core of the company, which is the product, whatever that may be.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, even if your company goes bye-bye, if you have protection, like people sell patents all the time or license them or white label them, or there's different business models that even if you're not like physically selling a product, you can, if you have IP, if you have, there's value in your company, you could sell the company, there's lots of things you can do. And I think that's a really smart way to think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, there's a market for domain names.
Yeah, there is a market for domain names.
For example, I mean, that's a business.
You're right.
Yeah. Luckily, I scooped up my name a long time ago. It's very interesting because I don't think a lot of small businesses or startups think about that right out of the gate, right? It's like you incorporate, you get the business plan, you start to raise money, and then all of a sudden in the middle of starting to raise money, you're like, we've got to, you're in that pre-seed phase and you're like, what's the secret sauce? What is our moat? And that's where it becomes so important to have all of that protection around your idea. So if a founder was, let me see how to put this. If a founder was trying to navigate the IP space, what would your recommendation be?
That depends purely on what kind of business they have and what their plan is. When you say navigate the space, it's, like I said, we have patent, trademark, copyright. You could throw, branding in there. There's a lot of different things in the quote unquote space. So it really depends on what your product is, which will determine what kind of IP considerations you need to have, and then kind of familiarizing yourself on the various steps that need to be taken to protect your IP.
And so there's lawyers that only work on certain sort of IPs.
I think Tamara.
Yes.
Yeah, just do trademarks, just do patent decisions.
Yeah, definitely.
So you'd really want to research and find out who that lawyer is that specializes in your industry and what you need.
It's twofold there too, because there's industry specialists also and there's types of IP specialists. And then there are IP sort of generalists that can handle all areas of IP. So it really depends on what your goal is, what your situation is.
Well, it sounds like, Tamara, it sounds like this is why people need general counsel in their back pocket. And it sounds like that's why they need to contact Jordan so he can help them navigate, because quite frankly, I don't even know where to navigate to at this point. I know I need my LLC or my S Corp. I know I need to protect my IP, but I'm going to contact Jordan. He's going to let me know how to get there. So Jordan, how can people contact you?
Best way is probably via email, which is, should I just say it?
Sure. If you
email
want.
is J Denning, DENNING at 360businesslaw.com.
Beautiful. Wow. So if you have questions about law, contact Jordan. And if you have questions about growing your business, or you're learning on how to scale, market, all of those pieces, join us every week by subscribing to the What the Frac YouTube channel. Subscribe to us on LinkedIn. Our newsletter is very valuable. And so you can listen to us on anywhere you listen to podcasts. But with that being said, Tamara, see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you both. Enjoyed it.